This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good evening, everybody. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk College Football Huddle. How are you tonight? Hope you're all doing well. Past the holiday blues. It's a tough time of year, right? Listen, I want to welcome everybody on the Roku channel. They'll see this not live tonight, but we'll be on at noontime. You'll be seeing this noontime on Thursdays. The College Football Huddle, TGI Sports Talk College Football Huddle. A little bit about the show. We've covered college football nuts to bolts through the season, right through now, and the final coming up on Monday night with Georgia and Alabama in the All-SEC rematch. And we're going to probably segue a little bit into college basketball probably as we go through the coming weeks, but we welcome everybody on Roku. This will be our first show to air live on Roku, but we'll also have TGI Sports Talk, Are You Serious? With my co-host, the Mad New Yorker, Carlos Chavez, who could be in tonight, commenting on the show tonight. And also our Sunday Stream of Consciousness, which airs on Roku. It'll air at noon, I believe, on Sundays. And Are You Serious will air, I think, 11 on Fridays. But there'll be a lot of other content, too. I do a weekly vlog, which you can check out on the On Demand Center. And you can also check out some interviews that I've done both in the past and coming up in the future. And we welcome you all. And again, I want to thank the groups that allow me to share this because you guys have been tremendous. And all of you, including Rick Sherlock, happy hump day to you, Rick, our resident Georgia Bulldog fan. Not the only one, but the certainly our most vocal one, I would say. So welcome, Rick. And thank you to all of you that do watch either live or later on. And those of you, again, that will watch on Roku. And don't forget, we'll still air live on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all the places that we have up until now. So, guys, tonight, unfortunately, Mark Mancini has a prior obligation, and so does Jim Biringer. So I will be winging it for a little while on my own and with you guys and following up with your comments. I'll talk a little bit about the semifinals, a couple of bowl games that I found interesting, and we'll certainly look ahead to the final, and we'll talk about some other topics, a little bit of transfer portal news, some exceptional coaching jobs that I've I've identified myself from this year, maybe a look ahead at next year and some teams, some rumors about Jim Harbaugh going back to the NFL, and we'll have Lary Sorensen, which I know Rick will be happy, one of Rick's favorite. There you go. Larry will be back tonight at 7:45, I believe. Rick, he's actually at a show in Chicago, I believe. So I'm not sure what setting we'll see Larry joining us, but Lary Sorensen, the color analyst for Wake Forest, will join us, and we'll talk about the Wake Forest bowl game and the unfortunate situation where they did not get to play the scheduled matchup with Texas A&M and then had to play a 5-7 Rutgers game. I want to talk about Larry about what kind of, whether that was a letdown for the Wake Forest squad. I mean, they certainly won the game handily and did not show any signs of a letdown, but it had to be a bit of a letdown, I would think, for the school to get to a good bowl game in the Gator Bowl and a good season playing against a certainly not even mediocre Rutgers team. We'll talk to Larry about that. We'll talk to Tim about some of the other coaching changes in the ACC. Mostly, I think all the coaching changes were in the Coastal Division, so not Wake Forest Division, but we'll talk to him about that. Some of the portal gains some of the schools have had. Wake Forest has got some kids that have entered the portal, but I think they've only signed one. They've hired a new defensive coordinator at Wake Forest, and we'll also talk about Michigan, as Michigan is Lary's alma mater, and we'll talk to him about Michigan's season, the disappointing showing in the semifinal a little bit, and also potentially maybe Jim Harbaugh's future. Is it in Michigan, or will it be back in the NFL? So lots to talk about there. Let's jump in. Let's just talk real quick. I want to just recap the finals again. And again, we ended up with not happens every year, not the best games. I mean, the best teams won. I was pulling for Cincinnati. We all know that. But as much because they were an underdog and I thought they deserved an opportunity. And I do not think that they didn't equate themselves in a fine fashion. The game was close until the fourth quarter. Cincinnati had some chances. I talked about it a little bit on the Sunday show. A couple of drives early in the game. Luke Fickell decided to settle for field goals where they could have gone and got aggressive and gone for first downs and potentially scored touchdowns. And I really believe that was the only way they were going to beat Oklahoma, was to put them on the defensive and get out early. And that hurt Cincinnati early in the game. I think they could have set a stronger tone, a more aggressive tone, and potentially changed the tone of that game, but they didn't do it. And, would have, could have, should have, and it didn't work out. Alabama's certainly not a bad football team, but not the Alabama teams that we've come to know and hate or love, depending on your affiliations. But you know what? It's a team with some pretty good players, and Bryce Young, certainly the Heisman Trophy winner. Not a big game for Bryce Young here. He did throw for 3 touchdowns, but only 181 yards. But Alabama's rushing game was just too much for Cincinnati. 301 yards rushing, tough. You can't. It's hard to beat that. You control the clock, you control everything in those situations. And the Cincinnati defense, while they equated themselves well, I thought early in the game, they did not. We're not able to withstand that because Cincinnati could not sustain drives. And a guy that I've really talked up a lot in Desmond Ridder, because he's a senior, a seasoned veteran, if you will, on the college level, did not perform well. Threw for only 144 yards, 17 of 29, I think, could not sustain drives. I mean, they did not play well, as I said, and converting third downs and keeping drives alive. And that did not keep the Cincinnati defense off the field. And that led to Alabama look, they dominated in the statistical sense in this game. But again, they didn't pull away really until the fourth quarter. Cincinnati was in this game. They were a score away from getting back in the game well into the fourth quarter, and that was they weren't able to capitalize. And that's, at the end of the day, it's a great Cincinnati. It's still a great year for Cincinnati, a great 3-year run for this team and Luke Fickell and seniors, seniors and guys that are leaving that aren't seniors, such as Ritter's leaving. He's been there, but he's been a veteran there the whole 3 years. Jerome Ford, who didn't have a horrible game, ran for 77 yards on just 15 carries. He'll be declaring for the draft, I believe, as well as they're going to lose their 2 best defensive players in Sanders and I'm trying to think of Ahmad Gardner is also going to declare for the draft. So it's going to be interesting to see what Cincinnati does next year. We'll see how good a coach Luke Fickell is, as there's a lot of key pieces to replace here. And some of it will have to be done through the portal, which is certainly a great way to do it now. Again, everybody's a free agent every year. And I like it and I don't like it. But I'm confident Luke Fickell will keep this team relevant. Again, they've only got another couple years, and they'll be moving to the Big 12. So this team has got to find a way back. So again, an interesting matchup. We wanted to see how Cincinnati would do. They were carrying the hopes of all the Group of 5 teams that came before them that didn't get a chance, and the ones that will come after them that hope to get a chance. And we'll maybe take a look if we have a chance, after our Larry Sorensen interview, to kind of look ahead at next year and maybe try to pick out who the Cincinnati will be next year. So anyway, that's semifinal number 1. Semifinal number 2, which I'm sure Rick has some interest in, the Georgia Bulldogs, I feel, thoroughly dominated, worse or more, I should say, than Alabama dominated Cincinnati. Georgia rebounded from that horrible effort against Alabama a month ago, 5 weeks ago, whatever it might be. They got ahead 14-0 here in the first couple of possessions in the first quarter. It was 27-3 at halftime. The game was basically over. Stetson Bennett played very well, efficient. Something to think about as we go into the final. Stetson Bennett has a better passer rating than Bryce Young. He doesn't have all the numbers yardage-wise and touchdowns-wise, but his rating is better. So that'll be interesting to see. He played well in this game. The running game was efficient, and a lot of guys, touched the football in this offense. And let me see, Rick's got a comment here. Let's see what Rick's got here for us. Unfortunately, this game was what the casual fan saw Cincinnati play. Unfortunately, this game is what the casual fan saw Cincinnati play. I'm not really sure. Maybe you can elaborate a little, Rick, because I'm a little slow tonight. So, what else in this? J.J. McCarthy for Michigan in this again, back to the semifinal. J.J. McCarthy, not very good. 7 of 17, 131 yards. But Cade McNamara was actually the starter, and he threw 2 interceptions. McCarthy actually came in to replace him. I got a little ahead of myself there. But again, just not a good effort. And 91 yards rushing for Georgia. We talked about it, and Rick hit this one dead on when I talked about the preview leading up to this game, that Michigan, what they did was run the football, and that's what they were going to do. And I said, and Rick had said, I should say, that they'd be playing right into Georgia's strength. But that's how you got to win these games a lot of times. Your strength has got to be better than theirs. And turned out that Georgia's strength outweighed the strength of Michigan by far. So that forced him to have to throw the ball. And when Cade McNamara has to throw the football, he is not, an elite quarterback. He's a good game manager, has been all year. And it ended here, unfortunately for them. It was just not a good showing. 34-11 in my mind. I don't think the game was that close. Didn't feel that close. We got another comment here. I know the comments are lagging behind, so it's a little hard. So sometimes, and for viewers who might catch us for the first time on Roku, we do take a lot of comments from the audience. So sometimes I've got to back up a little bit, and I try to not get too back, too far back. So anyway, Billy Pulver says, lucky for Cincinnati that Bama was asleep for 3 quarters. Bill, that's unfair, again, as always, to say. Bama didn't play that badly in the first 3 quarters. They just didn't. Cincinnati did not play well in the first 3 quarters, and we're still in the game. Let's look at that. Let's not forget that. Everybody wants to discount Cincinnati and say the only time they ever did well is when people didn't play well. Let's call it what it is. And sometimes when you think people are sleepwalking or not playing well, there are factors the other team's doing that cause that. Cincinnati's defense played well for the better part of this game until they really just got worn out, as I said. I know we're backing up a game, and that's fine. But again, this wasn't about Alabama sleepwalking for 3 quarters. Cincinnati's a good football team, and they didn't get it done. That's all. Alabama a better football team? Yep. Please. Don't tell me Alabama wasn't interested. If Alabama wasn't interested, and I've had these comments before, about, and I think Nick Saban is the best coach in the history of college football. Let me just start there before I say things that may seem derogatory to Nick Saban. Because if you're going to tell me that Alabama struggled this year at times against bad football teams like LSU and Florida, really bad football teams, and lost to Texas A&M with a backup quarterback, if you're going to tell me that's because they weren't up for the games, well, then that's Nick Saban's fault. And Nick Saban is not a coach that doesn't have his team up to play games. So I'm not gonna let that one pass, actually. So, but it is what it is. Again, did the better football team win in the end? Yeah, they did. Rick, I'll come back. We kind of backed up, so I saw your comment about Hutchinson. We'll get there. If Alabama blows out Georgia, well, Anthony, and welcome Anthony tonight, and welcome to you, Billy, too. Sorry, I kind of jumped on you before I said hello, but good evening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here, Anthony. I don't think the outcome of this game really determines whether we should expand the playoff or not. The playoff needs to expand no matter what happens here. There needs to be a wider pool of teams with a chance to win national championships. Again, the SEC is dominating. The SEC is going to get a bunch of at-large bids, whatever happens, most likely. And you could still end up with the same result. There's no, just because I want to expand the playoff does not mean I don't think we'd still end up right where we were now. And by the way, I'll tell you here later with my picks, but Alabama's not blowing Georgia out of this game. Alabama and Georgia there's a reason that Georgia is a 3-point favorite here, even after getting beaten badly by Alabama a month ago. I think it was just an off night. I really do. And I think Kirby Smart probably learned. Hello to Nikki Delaney up in the state of Washington tonight. How are you? Anyway, let's finish up and continue to make the comments. We'll jump back and forth between these games. It's certainly fine. I want to get back to the Michigan. Let's get back to the Michigan game here. Rick's talking about the O-line. Took Hutchinson out of the game, and very good point. Hutchinson projected as a potential number 1 pick in the draft. Really good defensive player. Just because he didn't play well last Friday does not mean that Hutchinson is not a really, really good football player and probably will be a star on the next level. But that shows you how good that offensive line of Georgia is. And Rick is right on to point that out for sure. And Bennett's end of half clock management pissed. Yeah, look, Bennett is not an all-world quarterback, right? And that's going to be why they need to really, I think, they need to rush the football, certainly better than they did against Alabama the first time, and they need to kind of run it. They had a very effective and efficient running game here against Michigan, and you got to keep the pressure off of Bennett because he's not a guy who can help you, and the coaches got to help him in this clock management thing as well. And clock management is so important in the game of football, and it's amazing to me how many coaches don't get it. They don't coach it, which is why Bennett and players like Bennett struggle with it. Actually, let me do something here real quick since we're chatting about this topic here. Look, you see it on every level. You see it at the top level of college football. You see it in the pros. Andy Reid, one of the best coaches in football, in my mind. His clock management through his career has been atrocious, and it's so important to be able to manage that clock at both ends of the half, or, end of game and end of half. And Bennett really he struggled with that certainly in this game, and he cannot afford those types of mistakes against Alabama. What else did we take away from this game? Rick with a very good point about the Georgia offensive line taking Hutchinson out of this game. He had just 4 tackles the entire day. One pass defense. One tackle for a loss, and not his typical day for sure. What else we got here? Billy's got a hope Bama. I think it will be a close game, Billy. I feel like, again, Georgia's a 3-point favorite. Why don't we jump right into that? 7:20 already. If you guys got some comments you want to continue here on the semifinals, we can certainly jump backwards, and we'll have we'll have the last 20 minutes of the show to do comments as well after Lary's appearance at 7:45. We got a lot to cover with Larry tonight. We might keep him a little bit longer depending on his schedule. He is on the road, as they say. Look at the final. It's a rematch. Anthony's alluding to the fact that people don't want to see this anymore, and that's why we need a college football playoff. Let's not forget. There's no bigger proponent than me for a college football playoff expansion. But if we had 8 teams, 12 teams, 16 teams, there's certainly a better than good possibility still would ended up back here with Georgia and Alabama in the final. They're the best 2 teams in the country. That much is obvious right now. Alabama put a whooping on Georgia, and while this is not Nick Saban's best team, Nick Saban is doing his usual good job of coaching and has them in a position to win a national championship with not one of his best squads. I don't think it'll happen. The odds makers are telling you they don't think it'll happen. Now, again, the odds are the odds. The point spread is for one thing. Let's not forget. It isn't because people in Vegas think Georgia's necessarily 3 points better than Alabama. All they care about is getting the equal amount of money bet on both sides of this game. And that's why this game's a 3-point Georgia spread. Now, with that said, I do feel it does say that they think Georgia's a better football team, because if they were worried about getting money on Georgia from the casual bettor, from whoever, they would have installed Bama as a favorite to get the money bet on Georgia. But the money is not there. Hello, Dave Guyette. Good evening to you tonight. What's Mickey got to say here? Well, we had fun with the pick'em. That was the professional games, but I don't know what anybody know what these bots coming in the rooms are now all the time. We get them every show, and plus I see them elsewhere on other shows I've guested on. So I just block them and hope for the best. So off they go. What's Billy got here? Saban will make no excuses for a loss, and he shouldn't. He shouldn't. Nick Saban is, I'll tell you what, and again, just like Bill Belichick, who was a very close friend of Saban's, they certainly respect each other. They're much alike, and people hate them. They hate them for the same reasons. They're winners. Saban won't make excuses. Saban's a tough coach to play for. And people don't like him because they don't want to see him every year in a final. Well, you know what? As I said for years, as a Patriot fan, if you're tired of seeing my team, tell your team to get better. The SEC has had to get better to compete with Nick Saban. And they have gotten better. Georgia with Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart's a good coach. Georgia's had a really good team. He's 0 for 4 against his former employer, Nick Saban. Doesn't mean he's not a good football coach, and it doesn't mean that he chokes against chokes against his former mentor, let's say. Although Kirby Smart, as we said earlier, you talked about Rick, you talked about Bennett having some clock management issues. Kirby Smart's had some clock management issues late in games with a chance to win against Alabama that are fairly well documented. So, but it doesn't take away from the fact that Kirby Smart is a really good coach. So, but Nick Saban is the best coach in college football history. There's no doubting that. I don't think. And will he make excuses? No. And he is professionally when he's winning. This guy, he's just good at what he does. And I started talking about the SEC getting better, and it is getting better. Florida's down, but Florida makes a change. Dan Mullen was not up to recruiting against the Kirby Smarts, the Nick Sabans of this conference. Arkansas has made a good move and gotten better. You know, they did a tremendous job with the hiring of their new head coach last year, 2 years ago, Sam Pittman. And they've made great strides. Lane Kiffin has got Mississippi heading in the right direction. A great year this year. Mike Leach at Mississippi State, really good coach. Who am I missing in that league who's gotten better? You know, the league has gotten, below Alabama and Georgia, who are still the best teams in the conference, and again, the best teams in the country. The league has slowly gotten better below them. Tennessee with a good year. Kentucky much better. South Carolina's heading in the right direction with Shane Beamer. A&M with Jimbo Fisher's a big disappointment, but I think they'll rebound here at some point. Let's see what we got here. Good evening, Alan. How are you today? People ask how SEC teams play Bama so well. If they keep going to the title games, they can game plan better. They're built in a way to counter them. Well, look at Nick Saban. Look at this league. Here's another one. The bots are out tonight. Let me tell you. Nick Saban can't coach forever. College football, as a rule, has been cyclical as far as power conferences and which conferences dominate at which times. Now, we certainly are in a very long, like 15, 16, 17 years of dominance by the SEC. But before that, you would have 4 or 5 years of dominance by the Big Ten or the Pac-12 or the SEC or the old Southwest Conference, the Big 12. So it's cyclical and it will come around. And Nick Saban is just a tremendous football coach. And when Nick Saban goes, I guarantee you, Alabama will have a step back. They will have a step back because they did. When Bear Bryant retired, they had some good years, but you're talking about 25 years. I can't do math very well. 20 years or more. Maybe it is 25 years before Nick Saban got there, where they went through coaches right and left. Shula, Du Bois, Perkins, Gene Stallings had some success, won a national championship. And I'm missing a bunch of guys. They tried forever to replicate the Bear Bryant era, and they could not get there until they got the guy who was the next Bear Bryant and surpassed Bear Bryant as far as excellence goes, and that's Nick Saban. And when he goes, this team will come back to earth a bit. NFL drafts, college recruits, colleges have the advantage for dominance in my colleges have an advantage. What college? Are we talking about Alabama still? Big schools are always going to have an advantage, but I'm going to tell you something right now. And we're kind of moving into a little bit to the next topic, but the NIL is going to level the playing field a little bit. I wasn't sure what was going to happen with this, but you saw it, with Deion Sanders being able to get the number one recruit in the early recruiting stages to go to Jackson State. The NIL money is going to help these group of 5, and Jackson State's not even playing in FBS 1, right? So some of these schools are going to be able to get on a better level playing field with some of the powerhouses. Do I think they're going to dominate year to year? No. But you're going to see teams pop up every year that have, that are going to have 2 or 3 year runs, like Cincinnati, like UCF did a few years ago. You may see Houston go on a run like that, for instance. And I'm sure there's some other schools that we could probably talk about. But it's going to level a playing field, because if I'm going to be a guy that's going to be I could be a first round NFL pick, but I'll be a 3rd string offensive lineman at Alabama. I can go somewhere else and get real money and play. Only 6 BCF finals have been decided by 6 points or less in the last 24 years. It is time for a nail biter, but I guess, it's funny. We all want a playoff, and me included. But it seems the teams, this would maybe change that. The teams that aren't in a playoff now, the games are much better. The Utah-Ohio State game was a great game. The Notre Dame-Oklahoma State game was a great game. Although Notre Dame gave up 30 unanswered points to end up losing that game. But still a good football game. I think Utah is one of the big winners in this whole bowl. This whole year's bowl schedule myself. Oh, let's see. Let's hope so. I think it's possible. I mentioned this at the top. I'm going to talk a little bit with Lary Sorensen after we talk about the ACC a bit, Billy, about this. There are some growing. The voices are getting louder. The whispers are getting louder about Harbaugh potentially, maybe feeling he's gone as far as he can go at Michigan after this great season they had. And maybe considering returning to the pros. The Raiders are talked about. The Bears are talked about. The Raiders, both of them would be good situations for him with quarterbacks in place. So it'll be interesting to see whether that happens. Some people are saying the Vikings. I'm sure they'll come up, Rick, without a doubt. Look at with the year he's had. If he wants to go back to the NFL, he's 58 years old. He may have reached his, he may have gone as far as he can go at Michigan. He may feel like, it's just not going to be in the cards for him to win a national championship there. And it might be time to move on back to the NFL and shoot for a Super Bowl, which is probably easier to win than a national championship as long as you're playing against the SECs of the world. And while you're 58 years old, the SEC, by the time they're not dominating Alabama, Georgia's, and maybe the teams I just mentioned coming up behind them, that's okay, Bill. You don't have to be here for every second. I understand. But thanks for being here now. But we were going to talk about it more anyway. He may feel that it's going to be easier to win a Super Bowl, maybe if he can get back to the NFL, which I have no doubts that he will not finish his career at Michigan, and he'll be an NFL coach again, if not this year, then potentially the year after. Listen, back to the final before we run out of time and Larry gets here. We'll pick up some of this stuff afterwards as well. There's some other stuff I wanted to chat about. If we don't get to it, we don't get to it. It's not a big deal. You guys are a big part of what we do here, and I love getting the back and forth here. So Alan's got Vegas would be a good team for him to go for. They're already borderline playoff team. They may be a playoff team this year, Alan, for sure. And they do have a quarterback in place. As to Chicago and a different situation because they've got a young quarterback and Carr's been around a while in Vegas. So 2 situations that are good, potentially good situations for Harbaugh. And the Vikings, who knows? I mean, they could get in the mix there as well. Back to the final real quick. This game's a 3-point game, as we talked about. I just think I feel like what we saw in the first game was a bit of an aberration, and Georgia maybe was feeling the effects of not having. I don't want to belittle other teams or even belittle Alabama necessarily, but they didn't really get pushed that much during the regular season. And they kind of got away from what they do best early in that game, fell behind, and things didn't go well. Things just kind of snowballed. And maybe, they needed that wake-up call. Unfortunately, they knew they were in the playoff either way. And I'm not saying they weren't up ready to play that game, because Kirby Smart's got to be just itching, to beat Nick Saban in Alabama. He hasn't been able to do it so far, but neither is any of his other disciples. Nobody can seem to beat him. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in this game. I don't expect Brian Robinson to be able to run for 200 yards again against Georgia. So if you're going to go off what you saw in the semifinals, what you saw out of Georgia might be more emblematic of what you might see in the final than what you saw from Alabama. Stetson Bennett needs to play solid quarterback, not make mistakes, not make clock management mistakes like Rick pointed out earlier. And they need to control that ground game and keep Murray from just going off. Or Young, sorry, Murray. Where did I get Murray from? Sorry, I was thinking about Kyler Murray. keep Young from going off. And they need to be able to run the football, control the line of scrimmage. Again, we saw the way they dominated that offensive line did. It'll be a little harder. There's probably more depth on the Alabama front than there was on the Michigan front in my mind. Henderson's a great player, but he's not going to be out there all by himself. And I think he might be a better player than Hutchinson, to be honest with you. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in this game. Again, we talk about it every week. Control the line of scrimmage, you win this game. I think that's what's going to happen here. I think that's what will happen. Welcome to Safety and the Sports Writers tonight. If that might be Nate, I'm not sure, but good to have you here with us tonight, Nate. We're kind of breaking it down. For you, those of you who just joined us, Jim Biringer unable to make it tonight, Mark Mancini unable to make it, but we'll have Larry Sorensen in Wake Forest color commentator at 7:45. And we'll talk some ACC football and Wake Forest's bowl game. We'll talk about the championship game a bit, and Michigan, his alma mater's poor showing, unfortunately, and maybe we'll talk about the Jim Harbaugh situation with him as well. Get a few more comments here. Well, Billy, I'll tell you what. Maybe I'll take your money. I'm going to be betting Georgia come Monday night. I'm almost certain something's going to have to happen to change my mind. Now let's just hope we get through the game without any more problems. Alan can see it going to OT again. George will be ready and play a lot better. I certainly agree with that. And Bama, he's got Bama breaking their hearts 24-17 in overtime. Could happen. These are good football teams. Bill, you got a good point. I don't want to see OT either, because guess what? OT in college football is just awful. It's not even football. Bitcoin. It's funny, Rick. I told Carlos that, I can't get my head around Bitcoin. If I can't take it to the grocery store and buy, milk and beer with it, then I don't want it. What am I going to do with it? So I will bet $1 million in Bitcoin on Georgia, since it's not real anyway. There's nothing backing it up. Of course, there's nothing backing up the dollar either, but whatever. So look, it's going to be an interesting. I can't take that call. wish I knew who that was, but it's going to be an interesting a final for sure. But I do think Georgia's going to prevail, break the glass ceiling that they haven't been able to get through against Alabama. Kirby Smart has everything riding on this. Kirby Smart cannot go down as a guy who could not win the big game. And he's going to start getting that. Well, he's getting that rep already, but it's time. This is his best team. He's got his best. He may not have his best quarterback. I'm not sure yet. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. If maybe they go after Caleb Williams, who knows, to replace him. We'll talk a little bit about that later in the show, maybe the portal. But yeah, I should be at 2.5. I should be grabbing at 2.5 right now. I can't. I'm just in the shoebox, the cigar box. So I'm not really getting out there into the sports book world anymore. That's for younger guys. Where am I watching the game? Probably right in my recliner, Billy. Long weekend of professional football. I got an important Patriot game to watch on Sunday afternoon late, and I got to go out for that game. Don't know where I'm going yet, but Rick's got his money on Arch Manning. I know that. Don't worry, Rick. I don't need to write it down. I'm going to remember it because you've been touting that for quite some time. What's he in 6th grade now? I don't even know what he is. I'm kidding. He's a sophomore or junior. I'm not even sure. So he's a few years away from being able to get there. They can't wait for him. And I think Bennett and Daniel are both matriculating out of the program this year, if I'm not wrong. Rick, you can probably correct me on that, but I'm going to be all over Alabama in this, or not all over, but I'm going to be all over Georgia in this game. And then we're going to see whether Kirby Smart can reload. And that's the key, right? If you want to be a great, great college coach, and he's managed to do it so far. I mean, this is a guy who couldn't find room for Josh Fields to play, for crying out loud. But I get one more comment, and then we're going to bring in our special guest, Lary Sorensen, one of our friends of the show. Williams-Field Stable, Oklahoma. You and I talked about this, and we'll talk about it maybe a little with Larry. I'm going to talk about the transfer portal a little bit, and we'll talk about it maybe before we end the show too. I have a feeling Williams may be going to USC, but we'll see what happens there. Without further ado, though, let me welcome in one of the great friends of the show, Mr. Lary Sorensen, color analyst for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, and out on the sales trail this week, I think, right?
Yeah, a little bit. In Chicago, man, 13 degrees. I figured maybe if I started talking a little bit, I'd warm up. Trying anything at this point.
How's it going there? Is it going well? Tell us what you're doing out there, since I'm having you on. I might as well give you a little chance to pitch the product again.
Hey, appreciate that. I'm here at the ABCA convention, the Baseball Coaches Association convention, where about 5,500 different baseball coaches are going to converge at McCormick Place in Chicago. And it's their annual convention. They're going to be about 320 exhibitors. And a company that I work for, F5 Sports, has a product called Pitch Logic, which is a baseball that's got a circuit board inside that gives you all the spin rates and extension and velocity, video capture, 3D graphics. You can chart pitches and everything. Really cool product. And so we're here at the coaches convention, going to try to move some baseballs to some coaches.
That's awesome. And I got to make sure that I get it back on the website for you again. I know when I first interviewed you way back when we did the interview show, we talked about the product, and it really looks like a cool product that programs could certainly use. So get out, support
pitchlogic.com. Go to pitchlogic.com. Retails for $299, but it connects by Bluetooth to your telephone or to an iPad. And you can actually, if you're from the ages of 12 to, we have major leaguers that use it before they go to spring training. And you can record all of your pitches. You can see exactly all the different data that you get from it, arm, slot, all that great stuff. So really cool product.
Cool stuff. And we'll certainly talk more about that going forward when we have you on in the future. Well, I got to get you on a show. Rick Sherlock, one of our really good followers, brought it up that I got to get you on one of my Sunday shows to talk a little bit about your thoughts about the baseball lockout and stuff. And maybe I'll try to put that together here before it ends in the next 6 months or something.
Well, Keith, you know me. I've got thoughts.
You know.
I've got opinions.
We have to have you, and I know that you're one of my followers' favorites on my show, so I appreciate that. So, well, let's jump into the reason we have you here. I want to talk to you a little bit about Wake Forest. A nice win, great job getting to the Gator Bowl and whatnot. How was it? I mean, you were there as Texas A&M backed out of this game. What was the feeling around the Wake Forest program as that was all coming down?
It was really interesting. And actually, I was in Winston-Salem getting ready to interview Dave Clawson, and I pulled up to practice, and there was nobody at practice. And I said, well, this can't be good, because usually I get him right after practice for our pregame show. And there was nobody on the field, nobody indoors. So I texted him, and he said, come on up to my office at noon. And I did. And this was on Wednesday, the week before. And he said, there's no sense doing this. In about an hour, we're probably going to announce that Texas A&M is gone. And I'll tell you what, Wake Forest really wanted to play. They really wanted to play in the Gator Bowl. They played in the first Gator Bowl ever. And so they had a special feeling for that. They really wanted to play the game. And so they just said, we're here. We're ready to play. What kind of scenarios are there out there? And as it turned out, Rutgers, with the best APR that was available, wanted to play as well. So it came down really to either Rutgers or Illinois, and Rutgers was the first team up, and Greg Schiano said, yeah, we'll play. So a lot of credit to them. They stayed in practice for about a week after because their finals weren't until the 22nd. So they practiced a little bit more. And the main feeling was, thank you, Rutgers, for coming. We know that we should be favored because we've been practicing, we've been preparing. The team went into a regular weekly season mode instead of bowl mode, especially the staff. They just started game planning right away. And all of a sudden, there was the game. Florida was beautiful, 84 degrees, very good football game. Wake came out with their 11th win for only the second time in school history. So it was a really fun trip, a really good day.
Yeah, and Rick talks about giving Rutgers some credit for playing a competitive game without a lot of prep or film time. So
no doubt. And, think about this. They had their punters from Australia, and he flew home, got home, and when he got to Sydney, he looked at his phone and it said, looks like we're going to play in a bowl game. Can you get back? And he had to quarantine for 3 days. And he jumped on a plane, flew all the way back to New Jersey, and got ready to play the game. They had, I think, 2 or 3 practices, something like that, and they came out and played. So big time tip of the hat to Rutgers and for doing that. And first half was very competitive, and then just Wake Forest was a little bit better conditioned, a little bit better prepared, and it took its toll.
Yeah, well, congratulations again to the Dave Clawson and the school on their best season, I would say, at least win-wise, right? Best records ever. But
yeah, they won 11 one other time, but this team was very special and raised the bar. The motto at the start of the year was good to great, and they all feel like they accomplished that. So terrific season. Hired a new defensive coordinator today, as a matter of fact, and that's a positive step as well. So
yeah, talk to us about that, his background and where he's coming from.
Well, Brad Lambert had been at Wake Forest before. And he's a very, very dear friend of my broadcast partner, Stan Cotton. I've heard about him for the last 8 years. So he's coming back. He had been, he went to Charlotte and restarted their program there, went to Purdue last year, and now Purdue is looking for their 4th defensive coordinator in as many years. And Brad Lambert will be coming to be the defensive coordinator at Wake Forest. Big reputation as a defensive guy, and has a lot of the same values, part of the Wake Forest family from before. So it seems like a really, really good fit for everybody.
Excellent. And what other big changes can we see? I know, we were talking a little about the transfer portal, and I know that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the team's lost a player, but that hasn't really brought anybody in yet, or have they? Or are there guys on the horizon that about in the portal? Or
Brought in one defensive player, a defensive lineman, and slips my mind where he's coming in from. But they have a veteran, a grad transfer defensive lineman coming in. The best news is Sam Hartman's coming back, which is exceptional news. You get him for at least one more year. He's got 2 years of eligibility, but he passed for over 4,000 yards this year, had a great year. Christian Beal-Smith entered the transfer portal, who was the number one running back of 3. And, if you think about the scenario, Kenneth Walker played a couple of years at Wake Forest, was one of the 2 running backs that they would have used. He hit the transfer portal, went out, had himself a great year, and got ready for the NFL. Christian Beal-Smith, going to go take a year, go to another school, try to find an offense that matches him. And so everybody moves up a step on the totem pole. Got some really good freshmen coming in that will start filling in the backside, and it'll be the same routine next year. Let's keep 2 to 3 guys ready, healthy, good to go, and follow that program. So,
do you feel like there's a chance the team takes even a small step back, or can they continue this momentum with all these changes?
Only going to lose 6 starters, Keith.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they did, they only signed 12 players because they knew that there were going to be a lot of guys coming back for an extra year. Virtually the entire offensive line just about is going to be coming back. And so they're very excited about the offense in particular. Donovan Green, who was expected to be the number 1 wide receiver, had an knee injury in the offseason, and he'll be back. So you lose Jacory Roberson, who's going to enter the pro draft, but you get Donovan Green back, and they've got another freshman that is one of the highest ranked players that they've ever brought in. So future's looking good for Wake Forest in a nutshell, and I know you got lots of things you want to talk about besides Wake Forest too, but the future looks good. Everybody's excited about Brad Lambert coming in to head up the defense because the defense was in triple digits overall last year, and if you cut that in half like he did with Purdue, then all of a sudden you're in pretty good shape.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of other changes in the ACC as well, not necessarily in Wake Forest division, but in the Coastal, there's 4 coaching changes, including a big one in Miami with Marco Cristobal coming back to his alma mater. How do you think this is going to affect the league overall with this turnover in the Coastal? And I mean, do you think it helps? Do you think these changes are things that are going to make the league stronger as a whole, or how do you foresee what's going to happen here with these?
Like anything else, when you make changes, you get better or you get worse. It seems like, because it takes somebody a while to get their program in. And with all those changes, I suspect we'll see half of them get good, get better, half of them maybe slide a little bit or struggle a little bit. I think the big thing that's going to happen is Clemson will be good again. And even though they reach double figures again, I think that they'll be better. They'll have a different kind of intensity, and that'll bring more prestige to the league. And you could hear it. You could hear everybody saying that the conference isn't any good. So I think Clemson will bounce back. They'll be very good again. I think Wake Forest is going to be very good. The East and the Atlantic will be very, very tough again next year, especially.
Yeah, and I don't think the criticism against the ACC this year was fair. Just because Clemson's down doesn't mean the rest of the. I mean, obviously Wake Forest had a really good year. Pittsburgh had a really, really good year as well. It was unfortunate in their bowl game. Just since we're on that topic now, that the best 2 players on each team, and Pittsburgh and Michigan State, both opt out of that game, which I'm really. And it brings me, I'm going to go full circle. I'm going to go back to the Texas A&M pulling out, because it wasn't just a COVID situation with them. I mean, they had players that were hit the transfer portal. They had players that opted out, plus the COVID situation. I mean, something's got to happen to change some of this stuff, so we aren't having all these great players not playing in the biggest games of the year.
Really, it was a crapshoot all the way around. You talk about the ACC being a topsy-turvy league this year, with Wake Forest winning the Atlantic Division and Pittsburgh winning the Coastal Division. Yep. Well, look all around college football. There were changes and turnovers every place in champions, but in the end, we're coming down to Alabama and Georgia. So go figure that out. So the rich get richer. I think that there are going to be another year of equality before it really gets itself separated, which to me means another season of any team can beat anybody on any given Saturday. And I think that's what we saw a lot of. And Dave Clawson, to his credit, said it in the summertime. He said, this has got a chance to be the greatest college football season we've ever seen. And boy, it was exciting, and there was a lot going on.
No lack of stories. I mean,
No.
Cincinnati was such a great story too.
Yeah.
What happened Saturday, and we'll talk a little bit about the semifinal games in a second. But I want to get this. Alan's got a question about talking about the ACC. What you think Miami and Florida State need to do to get back to where they have been in the past? I think Miami took a big step in the coaching change, but they need to keep kids home in my mind. But what are your thoughts about the status of those programs?
Well, with Miami, in the coaching change and in the athletic director change too. I think that they really established that they are going to take football and elevate it to a different level from what we're hearing about as far as facilities go, as far as looking a little bit closer to campus to have their stadium so that they can get their students involved. One of the things that helped turn Wake Forest around was, even though there's only about 5,400 undergrad students, they were getting 80% of them to come to the games. And it shows. When you get that kind of rabid support, the team feeds on that. And when you sell out your stadium, even though it only holds 31,500, but it's full, that kind of support really stands out for the players. And I think Miami has taken steps to bring that back and get some of that swagger back, and a good swagger it will be going forward. So I'm excited, and I love their quarterback. I think Van Dyke's going to be a heck of a player. I think he's going to be a really, really – and right now, ACC has the best quarterbacks in the country. Top to bottom, they have the best quarterbacks in the country. So I think that Miami's going to be a terrific program. I think that Florida State just needs to get itself on track a little bit. They can't quite figure out. Sometimes it seems like who's running the ship there. They got a lot of chiefs in a lot of different areas that want to be running the program from an outsider's perspective. That's what it looks like to me. Always great athletes. One of the last things that I do before I go up to the broadcast booth to do the game is take a lap around the field, and you see more Florida State guys in shorties showing off the six-pack abs than any other school in the conference. They've got the athletes, they've got the players, and the physical talent. It's just they've got to get the program going in the right direction. And I like Norvell. I think he'll do a good job from everything that I've seen. And man, I think that they'll be fine.
They probably need to be, because he might be on one of the hotter seats in the conference if he doesn't do well next year, I'm thinking.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems too. When you talked about getting things straightened out, one of the problems we've got going on is because of the signing day in December, we have to make decisions on coaches earlier in the season. And so you're seeing guys that are on a 5-game hot seat instead of a 12-game hot seat. And in 5 games at the start of the year, it's hard to predict exactly what these 19 to 22-year-olds are going to do and how it's going to come together for you. So it is a tough situation. There are some problems and some issues, but it sure was fun watching every Saturday or Friday night or Friday morning, whatever the case might have been during the course of this past season.
What do you make of, since we're on the Florida State topic, what do you make of them losing, the number 1 recruit in the country, basically, to Jackson State and Deion Sanders?
Well, Deion can talk now. Deion can sell ice to Eskimos.
Yeah.
So and a great player, and looks like he's going to be a really good coach too. Obviously knows his football. You don't accomplish what he's accomplished by accident. And a lot of that big display hides a lot of smarts and football knowledge too. So I was surprised that he went to change divisions. The way that guys have been jumping around here because of the coaching changes again is a little bit frustrating. And it's that domino effect. It just goes all the way down the line. And little old Wake Forest just keeps plugging along in their little niche and retaining players. And I think that's one of the great things is you don't find a lot of guys transferring out. You don't find wholesale changes. They pretty well retain what they've got.
Good point. And talking about big boys, Alan's got another point. We debate this a lot on this show, whether Notre Dame's going to need to join a conference at some point, or whether they'll continue to fight to stay independent as long as they can, because they get to reap the rewards of that big payday for TV and whatnot. But should Notre Dame have to join a conference, is the ACC still the best fit for them?
I think as far as what's the best fit for them, yes, the ACC is. And we had Jim Phillips, the commissioner, on our pregame a couple of weeks before the end of the season. And we talked about the brand that the ACC is trying to show. And it is the school with high academic standards that also has very good athletics. Student athlete comes first. It's you talk to the coaches, and I run across players all the time in what I do, and baseball players. And the first thing that the coaches at Wake Forest say is, what's his grade point? What are his test scores? They don't ask for pop times. They don't ask for batting averages. They don't ask for velocity. They ask, what are his grades like? Can we get him into school? And that's predominant around the high majority of the league. I think Wake Forest absolutely, or the ACC is absolutely the best fit for Notre Dame. I think that if they expand the playoffs, they're going to have to join a conference. I think that'll make a big difference.
Yeah, they definitely probably will. Do you think, in that same vein, I mean, do you think the ACC really should have held Notre Dame over the barrel a little bit last year when they were begging for someplace to go play in a league so they could schedule games? You think the ACC should have played a little harder ball with them and tried to lock them in for something long term?
Well, Notre Dame's still got a pretty good hammer out there with that ND. That's and that big old dome that you look at every time that you go there. So they've got a lot of great things going for it. The fact that they compete in the ACC and the other sports, I think, makes it a really easy transition. When you've got them in the other major Olympic sports as well, competing, and in basketball, I think that makes it an easy transition. And I do think that we'll see it happen. My first question to Jim Phillips was, I know everybody asked you this, but we want to know the day, the time, and everything else. Be specific. And he dodged it very nicely. He tap danced. But I think eventually that's going to happen.
Before we move out of the ACC, I got one comment here about Carson Cutugno, the Amsterdam Rams, becoming a freshman pitcher with the Deacons this year. I know you're close to the baseball program. I don't know if you know about Carson or not, but I'm assuming you will be.
I know the name. I know that they like him, and they start up here in a couple of days. As a matter of fact, every Wake Forest pitcher took a Pitch Logic baseball home with them for the Christmas break so that the coaches could watch the numbers as they were doing their bullpens in between. So, they've got the pitching laboratory at Wake Forest, one of the best in the country. It's one of the things they pride themselves on, have a new pitching coach this year. Corey Mascara came from Maryland to be the pitching coach. Amsterdam's been a nice connection.
Yeah.
That team has been a nice connection for for Wake Forest. So looking forward to seeing them February 18th. First game's February 18th.
Excellent. Back to football. Let's talk a little bit about what we saw in the semis. We'll leave your alma mater to last. I know you don't probably want to go into too much, but we got to talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about the Cincinnati-Alabama game. I mean, Alabama wins the game handily, but I don't think Cincinnati had anything to apologize for. I mean, they didn't play great on offense. Ritter had a tough game, but the defense played good for 2.5 quarters at least, 3 quarters almost. And I think they just got worn out because Cincinnati the offense couldn't stay on the field. I mean, do you think that we're going to get to see these group of 5 teams more? Did Cincinnati equate themselves enough to give people hope?
I think that it played out kind of the way everybody thinks. Yeah, you play great football. But when you try to compete with the Power 5 schools, the Power 5 schools have more athletes. They have better depth, and it shows up. And it's what used to happen to Wake Forest playing NC State, North Carolina, and Clemson. Is the team as Skip Prosser, the former basketball coach, used to say, the guys with the most NBA players win.
Yeah.
And in football, it's the same way. When you're sending 8, 9, 10 guys to the NFL every year, and the other schools are sending 2, you can figure out a game plan for 2. It's a lot harder to figure out a game plan to stop 10. And so it becomes depth. It becomes who stays healthiest for the entire season, which stars have good games on who plays up to the way they're supposed to play every single day. And that's what it comes down to. So I think that it played out the way most people expected. They competed. They made a good showing. In the end, there just wasn't quite enough. And I think the other thing that makes a difference is if you take some of those the group of 5 schools and make them play the bigger schools with the higher budgets and the better facilities and the better training facilities and the better nutritionists and
Yeah.
everything else that goes into it these days. I think that when you do that week after week after week after week, it wears you down. Your guys get hurt. Your guys get tired. Wake Forest's entire focus this year was keep more players healthy longer. And they hired a guy from the NFL that monitored practices, and all the teams are doing that now. And when you don't have the budget for it, you just can't keep up.
Good point. Good point. I really think Luke Fickell in this specific game, I was surprised he wasn't a little bit more aggressive on a couple of the fourth downs he had early in the game. I thought he could have changed the tone if he really pushed the envelope. He would have had to be successful. And no, we don't have crystal ball. We don't know if he would have been kicked a field goal once, punted the ball another time, and I don't know. I just felt like in their situation they really had to take it to Alabama, and I don't think they did. Where they,
I'm a Monday morning quarterback to the point of take the points where you can get points.
Yeah.
If you can get sure points, take points because you always need points. And then the other thing that I'm absolutely sure of is Luke Fickell knows a hell of a lot more about football than Larry Sorensen does.
I won't argue there for myself either. So,
I listen to people with the funky offense that Wake has, and they say, "Don't you think they should have?" And I said, "Those guys in that room know 1,000 times more about it than you do." So, that's the way it goes.
Rick does point out it was interesting when you saw them come out for the game, man.
Yeah.
They looked like men against boys in some of those matchups. So, but
like I said, the guys wearing shorties. Which team has more shorties coming out of the locker room when they come out for the pregame warm up? Take a pretty good bet that's a team that's going to win.
Agreed. So let's move on to the other game. The team I think will win the national championship, Georgia, and your Michigan Wolverines. Michigan got off to a pretty bad start here and could not recover. An exceptional year, no matter how you look at it. But what was your take on the semifinal game?
I think Georgia's overall team speed was unbelievable. I mean, they were flying around both sides of the ball. They were flying. They had better team speed, more athletes. I think they showed that they had more athletes. They found a way to contain Hutchinson pretty nicely and kept him from making any. He made some good plays, but it was an average game for him. And if you can keep the Stars to an average game, then you've got a pretty good chance of shutting them down. And I think that tip your hat to Georgia. They played better. They had a better team that day anyway. And it should be a good national championship. I'm not quite so sure about Georgia over Alabama, though. I just hope it's a really good football game.
I think we will get a good game. I really do.
Yeah.
And going back to Michigan real quick, I mean, their strength was running the ball, and Georgia's defensive line is their strength. So their strength outweighed Michigan's at the end of the day. So
they had more horses.
So since that game, the whispers have started to get louder that Jim Harbaugh may be considering a move back to the NFL. I don't know if you hear anything from your people at Michigan. What are your thoughts about that? And does he think he's peaked at what he can do at Michigan, or does he just have an urge to get back to the NFL, or none of the above?
Yeah, I talked to somebody that's really close to Harbaugh the other day, and he said that he really loves Michigan. He loves everything about it. Feels like there's still work to be done.
That would point towards him coming back then.
Yeah,
Be good for the Michigan folks. I'm sure.
But it's 2000. It's 2022 now. 2021 was upside down. Let's see, 2020 was upside down.
Yeah.
Who knows? It's really bizarre trying to figure it all out these days.
If he is interested, I think there's a couple of teams that have some quarterbacks that he might be interested in taking, and they're looking for coaches. The Chicago Bears and the Raiders come to mind.
Yeah.
Have an interest. There's going to be an interest in him potentially.
Well, and there's going to be a quarterback controversy probably in the fall at Michigan too. So how much does he want to deal with that? And he likes to be in control. And I think he found out that you got to kind of share some things.
Yeah.
A little bit at the college level, and I thought he did a great job of doing that. I thought he had a terrific year as a head coach for the University of Michigan. Lost his defensive line coach to USC, and that's kind of an interesting side story as well. The guy that coached those two great defensive linemen.
Yeah, it's similar to what we talked about with Wake and with Cincinnati. I mean, just because Michigan isn't going to the national championship game and not going to win it, it's still a pretty successful season when you win the Big Ten for the first time in 17 years. You beat Ohio State for the first time, at least in Jim Harbaugh's tenure. It's just not a bad year. I would think as a Wolverine fan, you've got to be very happy.
Absolutely. And I think most people are, except that, we've come to be such a short-term gratification society that you didn't win the national championship. It wasn't a good year.
Yeah.
There are people in the Wake Forest family that say, well, maybe not so great because, you did lose some games there. And let's be realistic. There's only one team that wins that last game. There's only one team that wins the last World Series game, and you can have a great season. And by all accounts, Wake Forest overachieved. Cincinnati overachieved. There are a lot of teams that people predict you to finish 5th, 6th, 7th in your conference, and you pop up and you finish 2nd, and that's a pretty darn good year for what everybody thought you were going to have. And I'm not sure why people can't appreciate a little bit more the teams that do have success and go places nobody thought they would go. And then all of a sudden we get greedy and we say, well, you're undefeated at 8-0, so why can't you go 14-0 and win the national championship? And you got to be realistic.
It's funny. I'm a big proponent for expanding the playoff, but there's times where I go, maybe we should just go back to the bowl system and let the writers pick a winner and let everybody argue about it all summer long, right? But I don't know. It's probably not the right answer, but there were a lot of teams that were happy at the end of the season when you won the Rose Bowl, you won the Orange Bowl, you won the Cotton Bowl, right?
Yeah, it's just changed so much. We've become so winner oriented, winner, WINNER oriented, that unless you do, you're a loser, by definition. And that's not always true, I don't think.
Good point. Larry, listen, you brought a lot of great insight to us this year, and I appreciate you coming back on. I will reach out to you if it's okay, and see if we can get you on our Sunday Stream of Consciousness show one day as we moved into baseball a little bit, because I think this thing's going to linger a little, and I want to get your opinion. And I know my folks want to see your opinion or hear your opinion on it as well. So
I agree. It is going to linger for a while. Do you do a summer broadcast? Do you do baseball stuff or just the Sunday show?
On my Sunday Stream of Consciousness show, I do a lot. We do a lot of baseball as we get into the season. So,
well, I'll be around and try to keep my ear to the ground for you.
I will be reaching out to you soon because I don't want this thing to end before I get your comment on it. I don't think it's going to end anytime soon myself, but
they aren't even talking from what I'm understanding. So it's a mess. It always is. And then there's a breakout and 2 days later, there's a deal done. So who knows?
Until they sit down, nothing's going to happen, right?
That's right. That's right.
Larry, thanks for everything you brought to our college football season. You've really, really made this a lot of fun, and I thank you, and I can't wait till we can do it next year, and we'll get your baseball insights on our Sunday show as well.
Appreciate it. Had a couple of your followers reach out to me as well, and I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Stay in touch.
All right. Thanks again, Larry.
You bet.
Bye-bye. The great Lary Sorensen from Wake Forest University, the color analyst for the Wake Forest football team, and also the baseball team, and he'll be seeing Carson Catuno pitch for the Demon Deacons here in just a few weeks. So congratulations to Carson, and good luck on his college career as it begins. Just to kind of get back to a few things, I don't remember what we were talking about when we brought Larry in, but a lot of good stuff from Larry. I know a lot of you guys have, and Rick, I know Rick, I think you were one of the guys Larry mentioned reach out to him. And that was certainly very, very appreciative. So I don't know, Alan was a right pitcher that got drafted to Texas. I'm not really sure about that, to be honest with you, but we can maybe talk to Larry about that when we get him on a Sunday show. And we will, to talk about the baseball situation. Larry's a great guy. Larry, by the way, for those of you who may not know, and maybe our Roku audience who hasn't seen the show all year long, or seen some of the interviews, Larry was a really good Major League Baseball pitcher back in the 70s and early 80s with the Brewers and the Cardinals and a few other teams. And I certainly remember him from that time. But Larry's been a good friend to this show, and I thank him a lot for all that insight. What else we got tonight, guys? We got about 16 minutes left. We got to make sure we stay on target now because this show has an hour and a half window for Roku. And again, it will air on Roku on the Northeast Streaming Sports channel. On this show will air tomorrow on Thursdays at noontime. Our Are You Serious show from Friday mornings with the Mad New Yorker will air. We'll still do it live at 8 a.m., but it will air on Roku at 11 a.m. on Fridays. And the Sunday Stream of Consciousness will still do live on Facebook and all the other outlets at 9 a.m., but it will air at noon on the Roku channel for those of you who will be watching this later on Roku and want to know what the schedule will be. And also on demand, you'll be able to catch the TGI Sports Talk weekly vlogs and any interviews I do. I do want to get back into doing some interviews as we go forward, and we're going to probably do them and air them, as one-off specials. It's just getting hard to get guests, as I mentioned, so it's a lot of fun. So let's see. Off topic, Washington's new name apparently got leaked, and Alan says it's the Admirals. I had not heard that story, but we'll certainly, if that's been leaked, we'll probably know more about that when we do our show on Sunday morning, and we can certainly talk about it then. And we'll get more into baseball, as Larry mentioned as well on Sundays. We do some baseball, but right now there's no baseball to talk about. So we'll talk about the lockout with Larry. And once college is over, the NFL's over. We got to talk about some other stuff, not just the NBA. I like the NBA. It's okay, but I can't talk about it for 2 hours, right? We're going to morph this show a little bit, by the way. We'll be talking probably full college football for another week or so, but we're going to start getting into a little bit of college basketball so that we can continue the show. And we'll keep it a college-themed show. So we'll talk about college basketball. And who knows, maybe even some college hockey as we go down the road. I haven't thought about it too much, but I did have that pop in my head this evening. So we'll start diving into that as we wrap up the college football season in the next few years. Let me talk about one thing. I talked a little bit about opt-outs, and I talked about Pickett opting out for Pittsburgh and Walker opting out for Michigan State. And, I'm having trouble getting my head around something, and I'd love to hear your guys' comments and views on this thing. What I don't get is, let's just take Pickett, and he's not the only guy. Opted out of the Peach Bowl with Pittsburgh against Michigan State, ostensibly to stay healthy, I guess, and protect himself. Why that game would have been any more dangerous than the 13 he played before it, I don't know. But now he's playing in the Senior Bowl, which is the preeminent bowl, for scouts from the NFL to get you. The coaching staffs are NFL or staffs and whatnot. Well, geez, he could get hurt that week. So this whole opt-out thing something's got to get put into place. Somebody, and I don't know if it's Anthony or Alan or one of you guys. That's good old Bill. I'm gonna put that up in a second. One of you guys had mentioned that with all the NIL money around, don't pay them if they don't play the season. If you get hurt, I get it. But if you're going to just opt out and then you're going to play in the Senior Bowl, take their money back. Billy with a really good line here. Antonio Brown opted out. Antonio Brown, I try to be sympathetic to people, and mental illness is nothing to laugh about, right? And this guy's not right. He's just not right. I mean, he basically needs to opt out of the human race for crying out loud. This guy's gotten every break. And the stunt he pulled Sunday was just ridiculous. And after he probably should not have been brought back anyway with the ridiculousness he did with his COVID test, fake COVID tests, and all that other nonsense. Good grief, right? Yes, you're right, Rick. Hopefully forever. And again, mental health is a very important thing, but go get some help. And Tom Brady, everybody here knows how much I love Tom Brady. Stop enabling Antonio Brown. You made excuses for him after this event. Don't do it anymore, Tom. Stop, please. Saturday, 8 of the 10 Big 12 basketball teams have double-digit wins. Nice. Now we're getting into conference play. That's when I get interested, really, Alan. I was going to start morphing into this a little bit, and it's very hard to do because an hour and a half, we really fit a lot of information in. I thought these last, I don't know when we started this show, 4 months ago, in this hour and a half. They wanted me to cut this back to an hour to fit the Roku schedule and do it live. And I would prefer to have it air afterwards and keep the hour and a half, because I don't think an hour we can do justice for a lot of the topics that we covered on this show. And the thing's going to come when we start talking about college basketball, because there's a lot of stories to talk about. So that's the deal. And I do want to get into that, and it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. Big 12 is a really good conference, obviously. I'm a big East fan. I'm a St. John's fan. I know there's a lot of Syracuse fans probably in our audience here locally. And the college game is such a better game than the pro game right now. I just wish kids would stay longer. Well, it's a little both, Rick. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he's an entitled idiot, as a lot of them are. Not just in sports, by the way. I run into it every day with the people that I run across, in the real life work. And it's a generational thing, and I hate to be like that, but it isn't the way it used to be. People want everything, and they want it all now. And Antonio Brown's been that way since he came into the league. But there's still something else. There's something wrong with this guy. I mean, he's not all there. There's some people saying that, he's never been the same since he took the hit against the Cincinnati linebacker there, Burkett. I'm probably saying his name wrong. If you remember on that, I think it was a Thursday night game. It was an ugly, ugly hit. And that he might have, early signs of CTE and stuff. Whatever. But whatever it is, the man needs help, and the man doesn't need to be playing in the NFL. So I think it's a combination of things, to be honest with you. I didn't want to stay on the NFL thing here, but since I opened the door, he is a good talent. I mean, he's an amazing talent. And this has happened to a lot of guys throughout sports history who had a ton of talent and wasted it, with their attitudes or their habits. It's a sad situation. It really is. I was going to talk about something here before we wrap up. We still got about 5 minutes or so before I want to wrap it up. If you guys got any last comments you want to bring up, again, I will be picking Georgia over Alabama. If I change my mind, you'll know by Sunday, but I will be laying the points. I'm hoping to get 2.5 in the cigar box on Monday. So we'll see how that goes. By the way, I am on a all-time horrible run. Not even a month ago, I was at the top of the collection standings in the cigar box, and today I stand second from the bottom. So it's been a tremendous run of bad luck and bad choices by yours truly. But that's another story. And this college football bowl season has not helped me. I should have stayed away from all these games. It's impossible to know who the heck is playing. It's impossible to know, who's opted out in every game. And it's just, I should just stayed away from it. Booger McFarland said he would never trust him as a teammate. I agree. We're going to get off of him now. Mel Kiper might have put his foot on his first mock draft this month. Curious to see where he has Pickett. Well, this is a good topic. and one we will be tackling certainly as we go through the spring months. Heck, by the time we get the final next week, we're only going to be, 90 days away from the draft or something. Again, I went to Perth. My math isn't great. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Pickett is the quarterback. So we'll be talking a lot in the coming weeks about the draft. We'll look at some of the mock drafts. I'm not going to dive too much into them, too far deep into them. We'll look at some of the top picks and whatnot, and we'll look at some of the rankings by position, and we'll get your guys' comments about and thoughts about where you think certain guys ought to go, where they might fit best. Pickett's really Pickett and probably Lewis are the two best quarterbacks coming out. Sam Howell's announced that he's coming out from North Carolina, but this wasn't his best year. It's a very weak quarterback class this year. Pickett's probably the best player in it. And I mean, if I'm a Steeler fan, I'm trying to get myself positioned where I can pick him. Mr. Jennings saved most of us, but did he do us any favors, Rick? I think, there's this thing on Facebook I see a lot where there's a guy and he goes, another day without using algebra. Well, it's a good thing because I can't do it. My marketing manager at work always says he does all my algebra for me. That's why I don't do any algebra. When it comes to formulas on Excel spreadsheets and stuff, I always steal his formulas for my own. Anyway, as far as the draft goes, this will be an interesting draft because I don't think you're going to see, 5 quarterbacks go in the first 15 picks or whatever we had last year. I think you're going to see a lot of defensive linemen, a lot of offensive linemen go early this year. Yeah, the UCF quarterback did transfer to Oklahoma. Was it Oklahoma? Probably don't have let me see if I can quickly. I don't know if I got time for this, Alan, or not. Let me see. I did see the story. Let me see if it's still on the headline page here. If not, I got quarterbacks up. I do know the UCF quarterback transferred. I just don't know where he transferred to. Dylan Gabriel. Yes, Dylan Gabriel transferred to Oklahoma. Another sign to me that maybe Caleb Williams will go. We started on that. We'll end with. I started to get to that Caleb Williams story. Still a lot of pretty big names quarterback wise in the portal. Not just quarterbacks, but in general. Caleb Williams and Casey Thompson are the two big names that are still out there that have not signed, along with Emory Jones from Florida, Robbie Ashford from Oregon. Caleb Williams is the most intriguing case, though, as he, it's a little different for him. And I think it's because he's there, entered that portal because the guy who recruited him has left town. And this is the situation where I can see guys going. But I think Caleb Williams is seriously considering a move to USC to play again for Lincoln Riley. That's what I'm thinking. So anyway, guys, we're going to wrap up this show. And I appreciate it. All your guys' comments, Alan, Anthony, Rick, Billy, Mickey, Mark Robert Shaw. Who else has been here? I'm trying to scan through. Even you bots that I had to block. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. Everybody that'll see this later on Roku, thanks for watching. Hope you'll watch some of our other shows. And also stay tuned on Wednesday nights. We'll still be coming to you with college sports. Still going to have football as our lead and basketball and maybe even some hockey for you hockey fans. So Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk College Football Huddle. You have a great night. We're right here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network and Roku. Enjoy your evening. We'll see you soon. Have a great night, guys.